In this video, I want to talk to you about how you can improve your chances of getting promoted. And honestly, there's so many factors that go into it, so I can't really go that in depth without going on and on and on. And it does also differ based off of your firm and what role you're going to. So if you end up going from like analyst to senior analyst, it'll be different than if you were going from consultant to manager, and even different if you want to go from manager to partner or manager to managing director. So for this, I'm going to give you general tips that you should be getting. Honestly, I think a lot of this, you don't even need to be a consultant to get in to do all of this. It's really just mostly from my own experience, like what really do they look for as a company and also as an employee, in addition to how you can improve your chances in a very easy way. First, I want to give you a little bit more of my own experience. So I first started at Accenture in September of 2018. And honestly, I did not expect to get promoted in a year. Even my own career counselor, who is now like the people manager, which is basically your like lead that is not necessarily tied to any particular project you're on. It's not like your project manager or delivery lead or engagement manager. It's this one person that stays constant throughout your entire career. And this could be like at a Big Four, this could be at MBB or at Accenture. For us, we call it people manager now. So for this person is going to be the person who is really coaching you in your career, trying to advocate for your career growth and also your performance achievement / promotions and advancement. So I did want to talk about this because I started out in September 2018 and my people manager called career counselor at the time, and also I myself did not think I'd get promoted because I've barely been there for a year. So I got promoted from December 2019, which is when it actually was the time that I got promoted. However, I was only evaluated from September 2018 to July of 2019. So not really that much time to really see all this performance that I was doing could I demonstrate. And so because of that, I do know a thing or two in terms of promotions. When it comes to consulting, we do it, at least like when it comes to the bigger firms like MBB, Big Four, or Accenture or something like that. We do it more on a biannual basis, so twice a year. One official one for, at least at Accenture, one official one, and one is like the mid-year review, which is kind of like if you weren't previously promoted, but we think like we have some space or that we could, then you'll get promoted. But so there's really one official cycle. How you can really improve it? So there's a few things. First off, do well in your job. How do you do well in your job? So make sure you watch my video over here on what makes a good consultant, so that can really walk through what you need to do as a good consultant. But then you also need to make sure how out of all the other good consultants stand out. So first off, the main question you need to ask yourself is, are you doing the next level work? So what I'm saying is, like, let's say for example, I was an analyst at that time. Am I doing what senior analysts or other levels are doing? If like I'm only taking notes, I'm only like observing, maybe only asking questions to my team outside of my meetings, or like kind of doing things on the side but not being recognized for the work I'm doing, then yeah, I may just be doing normal analyst work. However, if you raise your hand, ask questions, try to lead discussions with the client, and also try to ask questions in a way that is showing you already did the research, and also you try to really do well in terms of leading and presenting and finding solutions, and you really try to show all your good work ethic, then you may be showing senior analyst level work. So that's what I would say is something you should be doing. If, let's say for example, you're a consultant moving into manager, are you already managing people? You need to start mentoring. You need to start working with teams. You need to know how can you delegate? How can you mentor people? When I'm saying mentoring, I'm talking about, like, let's say for example, you get this big deliverable. Are you going to do it yourself, or are you going to give it off to someone else to do it and also manage them and help them out? Because that's what a true manager would be doing. You're not necessarily micromanaging them. You could though, but like you don't want to. That's not necessarily the best way to nurture new talent, because at this time you're also supposed to be nurturing new talent. You're not necessarily supposed to be just doing work. So that is something you need to think about, is, are you doing the next level work? That's the first question you should be asking yourself after you do all the things that you'd be doing for good consulting. You need to make sure, are you doing the next level work? Because the question that you will ask themselves is like, are you doing next level work? Are you ready for the next level? That's like the main question. If you show that you're ready by doing all the things of the next level work, then we're like, oh, this should be easy transition. You shouldn't be struggling. You should really be demonstrating these qualities and activities that they're doing already that is ready for the role that you're going for. Another thing that I would recommend is make sure you actually network. Don't just do well in your job. You want to network within the practice. So let's say for example, I'm in the Workday practice. I want to make myself known in the practice. So you can either get involved in terms of discussion. So if there's something out there where they ask a question and it's just a question left hanging in like whatever forum you guys are in, answer it. And that way you can get visibility by not only people who look at it, but the person who is asking it. So that way they know like, oh, this person is knowledgeable in this person is helpful. And then you kind of raise and improve your personal brand. If you improve your personal brand, people are going to start going to you and trust you and acknowledge you as the go-to person for that. You want to be known as that go-to person. However, one thing to also note about that is it's similar to what we call an Accenture +1 or initiative work from what I heard from the other firms. This is something you want to do outside of just your job description. It's not necessarily just doing good work or doing what your client responsibilities are. It's also something for the firm. My example is Office Champion. So for Office Champions, we organize events for the office. So rather than like a paint and sip or happy hour or a holiday party or anything like that, even organizing town hall slides, moderating a town hall, or preparing slides or preparing go live announcements, all these kind of things all fall under Office Champion. Not necessarily chargeable for this. And by the way, if you don't know what chargeable is, it's basically billable hours to the client. From these hours, this is not related to my client work. However, it is expected to do something for the firm. So that's what I meant by client responsibilities. If you guys haven't seen my Instagram reel on what are the breakdown, it's a really fun take on my breakdown of a day. Make sure to check the link down below on the Instagram reel on it, and also follow my Instagram. But that's kind of how what firm responsibilities will be. You're not supposed to just do the work, you're supposed to also bring value to the firm. So that's mine. You can do something like building assets for the firm. So let's say, for example, you're working on AI. What can you do? You can build training materials. Maybe someone who's interested in AI. How do you build that? So that way they can understand it. Another thing could be onboarding. You could be an onboarding buddy. Someone just recently joined the firm. So how do you get them to feel welcome? Another one could be helping out with recruitment. So you can help out with the career fair. You can do the interviews. That's one. Another one could be working with business development, working with managing directors and partners on bringing new clients. You can help them out. Either even if you're an analyst or associate or whatever. There's so many things you could do on your own. So that could be helping out with the slides or taking notes, or even something as simple as just being there and reading the room. There's so many things you could do. A lot of shadowing opportunities as well. It's not necessarily a +1, but shadowing is good too for you to get experience and get the actual networking aspect of it, of working with people that are not in your area or in your project, and get that experience. So that way when they do have a project, you are also known for that. So doing that can really help you figure out where you fall, what you like to do. You honestly want to make sure you do this +1 and you kill it, okay? Don't just do it because you want it on your resume or something to bring up in performance. You want to also do well in it. If you just kind of I'm just gonna do the bare minimal, you're not gonna get noticed. Just because you're doing it doesn't mean you're gonna get promoted. It just means that, yeah, you're not standing out, but compared to everyone who actually is caring about their +1 and doing what they want to do, are you gonna stand out to them? Probably not. So you just want to make sure you find something and do well in it. Don't just do it and I have this, so why not? Why didn't I get promoted? So there's that. Another thing, if you're trying to figure out what you could do in addition to your +1, is get visibility from your managing. And when I'm talking about team, I'm not necessarily talking about your project team. I'm talking about the leadership team. So your managing director on the regional level, on the practice level, maybe on your market level. So all of that can really help, because they are typically the ones that are going to decide who gets promoted or not. They want to see okay, well, let's say for example, this person who is an Office Champion, me, what do they possibly know? If I barely see them or know about them, I just know kind of the work they do, you're not necessarily going to get as recognized as someone who's directly working with them. Let's say for example, business development with that managing director or partner who is deciding on that, because now they're going to favor the person that they worked with because they know the work ethic. So there's two things you can go about it. One is finding a +1 or a project with good visibility with those managing directors. And it's not necessarily feeling like you're using them. You're just being smart with your time and getting particularly picky about that too. So for example, I've had a client where I'm ooh, it's a big project. It's a pretty specific one where if we do this well, we actually will get so much more business. That project is a very good project to be in then. If you're just doing here's a little project here and there, it's the easy work, you may or may not be noticed because it's just not necessarily the most critical or important project out there. I mean, all projects are important, but I'm saying that you would probably want something with more visibility and also more importance in that project. Sometimes it could be something called like a diamond client. They bring a lot of money into the firm, or that they bring in a lot of projects as well. So that is something you may want to consider. So sometimes, like let's say for example, like a smaller project and a bigger project, I like to be on the smaller projects in general because they allow me to do more and demonstrate more of that next level. So that is also a trade-off, because in those smaller projects, they're not as necessarily as important as those big projects that bring in a lot more revenue. So that is something you need to keep in mind. It is a little bit difficult. You don't, like, honestly, if you really have to choose the one that you feel like will grow you as a consultant and also grow you in terms of, do you like the work that you're doing? Don't just do things just because like, I want to get promoted. You want to get noticed for things that you want to be doing, so that way you'll be pushed towards the direction you want to go. At least that's just my opinion. You can just go for specifically for the promotion, but I would rather like doing what I'm doing while I'm doing that. So those are really what I would be recommending about visibility. So I mentioned showing your next level work, networking, +1, visibility. One last thing I want to talk about is making sure you have feedback, anecdotes, and people that could back up for every single one of these. It just does not make sense if you did all of this, not a single person has observed what you're doing or what you're talking about. Like visibility kind of like helps with that because you are working directly with them, they can observe it. But if you don't have anyone else to vouch for what you're doing, like if let's say for example you have this whole week that you were working really hard on this one spreadsheet, or you're trying to work on this code or whatever, but then no one's there to see like how hard you're working, you have to also involve people in there. So involve people in there, like you don't have to necessarily just say like, I want to show you what I'm working on. No, you don't have to do that. You could do something more like check-in points, or talking about like, by the way, I'm working on this. Do you have any questions on this? Or by the way, I'm working on this. Here's like a progress report kind of thing. So there's so many ways you can do it. Do like status updates, or do very casual, just chatting and whatnot. Really get feedback. Like that's very important. Not also just to like get feedback and just get it, but like also if there's any negative feedback, work on it, because they're also going to observe how are you taking feedback. Are you going to be someone that's coachable? And that is one thing I think is like probably the most important, is getting feedback. No matter how hard of a worker you are, if no one's giving you feedback, no one's telling your people manager or your coach or your like whoever's your advocate or your sponsor what you're doing, you're not gonna get noticed, okay? That's the sad truth. So you need to kind of make your way through, tell them exactly what you're doing. Also ask people for feedback too. So at least at Accenture, we have a little tool that we can request particular people in particular priorities for feedback. So you could use that, and then they'll get an email notification to get feedback. So if you just have it empty, completely empty, you don't want to be the last one that like right before they do all the performance review that you're asking for all this feedback, because like all the other people are going to be asking the same exact thing. You don't want to procrastinate. You want to do it all throughout the entire year, and also update your priorities too. So make sure people know about it so you can ask for their feedback as well. So that's like another thing that's really important. I think like if anything, like just make sure you do your job well. Make sure you do a +1, make sure you have a personal brand. So basically you want to be good in your project, out of your project, and within your company and outside of your company. You don't want to get in trouble for anything from outside the company coming in. So make sure you have that recognition. And whether or not that's good or bad, like it's always good to just ask for that feedback. Sometimes like what they might do, they'll give you like an internal feedback, and then they'll give you the external feedback. Internal feedback could be directly to you. I've gotten this sometimes where they send an email directly to you and they say like, what do you think about this before I post it up? And then they post it up, like you can either like maybe talk about something about that, or learn about like this particular feedback that you get, negative or positive. And then that way you can bring it up. So sometimes they may miss something. So they might do that in a way of like, oh, by the way, remember when I did this for you and it was such a great game changer? They may have forgotten about that. Like they're doing their own lives too. So doing that is really good too. So I've had like a lot of people who've done that for me. It's not necessarily just like a few people that are decent enough to do that. Some people, they just give you directly feedback onto the portal or whatever that you guys use. But that is something you need to keep in mind. It's not necessarily something that you have to expect. You have to ask for it and be proactive on it. So that's what I have in terms of tips to get promoted. This is definitely not comprehensive at all. I purposely left it broad, but these are very specific ones for if you want to do well. And I think these are also even better if you are an analyst or your associate, you have absolutely nothing that you have absolutely no clue how this is going to work, because I can't really go that specific. Every firm does things differently. Boutique firms do completely different. They may actually do on a quarterly basis rather than biannually or maybe once a year. And then also like each company always changes their like what their metrics. And one thing I want to keep in mind is you'll have something like the pandemic that will come in. Just because you didn't get promoted doesn't mean you didn't deserve one, okay? It's always gonna be about how many spots are open, and then out of those spots, who truly deserves it. You're gonna get the super high performers. And like I mentioned before, like sometimes the big important projects are a lot more important to promote than the smaller projects where you get so many skills, so many experiences, but it may not be that much in terms of visibility and importance. That's something to keep in mind. So there's always going to be a give or take, but in my opinion, if I like my job, if I like where I'm at, why not? But at least I tried. So if you had to take anything out of this, just make sure to follow all these tips. I think a lot of times you're just going to be like, do my job, right? And this is like what so many people I know who come into a company like Accenture or a consulting firm, they just do their job, but they don't do anything else. They don't do anything. They don't worry about visibility. They don't worry about anything about like showing the next level of work. They just think like doing a good job is enough, or even doing something like +1 or initiative work. That's all very equally important. So hopefully you guys found this very informative and interesting. Let me know if any of these tips have helped you, like maybe down the road when you do get promoted. But definitely just make sure you document the feedback. Make sure you do all the steps I'm talking about. They're not necessary steps, like could be out of order, whichever matters to you, but ideally you can do all of them. And thank you guys so much.